you look around the league, there's a lot of teams, in the hunt. We're in the hunt. You sit here and you say, hey, Thanksgiving, and close to the end of November, and we're in the hunt. When you sit around that table tomorrow, you're saying we're in the hunt. And there's a lot of teams that wish they were in the hunt. Well, we're in the hunt.
How do you tell a story that really hasn't been told before, spans over like half a century, and involves hundreds of people? Lyndsey D'Arcangelo did that, and she's going to be our guest on the In the Hunt cast, the author of Hail Mary. She writes for The Athletic. She writes for Just Women's Sports. And Sean Murphy and Kyle Turner and myself are going to grill her on her book. Hi, guys, and hi, Lyndsey. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Good. I'm the one who read the book. Kyle can't read, and Sean doesn't have
trying. Everyone knows that.
It wasn't Kyle's only review of the book was it needed pictures on every page. But no.
There are some pictures four parts, but
that's going to be big. That's going to be big for the Kyles that listen. The more pictures, the better. They've got to do as much reading.
Lyndsey, I think your target demo is more me. I like history a lot, but just to start off, this is the story of women's professional football. I guess not specifically the National Women's Football League, but just a lot going on. Like, start off, tell us how this even came to be.
Yeah, so to do that, you have to go back in history, back in time to when the sport was first invented. There's this perception out there that it was just, a male endeavor since its inception, which is not the case. Women have been trying to play this game for a very long time, since it was invented. So we retrace those steps, right, that led to the creation of the National Women's Football League in 1974. We start by recounting, like I said, the history and just different incidents of women all around the country, whether at high schools or just in groups of forming their own teams or just trying to play in some aspect, and then that getting shut down one way or another. There were a group of girls who played at a high school in North Dakota because during World War II, for homecoming, because there weren't enough guys around to form the team, so that happened, but that was only a one-time thing. And then you have women in the 1930s who formed a couple teams out in California to play against each other, and actually were gaining quite a following, but that petered out once the novelty wore off. And so you have all these things, right, building up to the early 1960s, when a guy by the name of Sid Friedman, who was a promoter for, we equal him to like a circus ringleader, like P.T. Barnum. And he liked to promote these odd, crazy events, mostly beauty pageants, but he did things like the world record for how long he could play the harmonica, things like that. And he saw this sort of curiosity about women playing football. And, at the time it was just kind of unheard of for women doing any sports, let alone a masculine sport like football. So he saw something there and decided to try to throw his money and ideas and creativity behind it, to see if he could make a buck. And what he did is he formed a team called the USA Daredevils, and he was based in Cleveland, so they eventually became the Cleveland Daredevils, and had a tryout, had all these women come, formed a team, promoted it all over the country, like through newspapers and newswire services and all that stuff. And the idea was to be like the Harlem Globetrotters, where they tour around and play men's teams, which he did at first. But once he saw that these women could actually like really play and hold their own, he thought, well, I'm going to start another women's league, and then, or another women's team and another one, and then create maybe my own league here where women compete against other women. And so that was his idea. And he started doing that around the Rust Belt area in the mid 1960s, early 1970s, but it never took off. And you find out in the book why it didn't take off and what he couldn't really get out of his own way. And then other men around the country saw the potential in what he was doing and decided to create their own franchises separate from his group. And eventually they decided to organize and start their own league officially. And that's when the National Women's Football League took off in 1974. And there's a whole backstory of how that came to be about and the different teams that were included. But throughout its run from 1974 to 1988, there are 19 different cities that had teams, some that came and went, some that lasted maybe 1 year, some that maybe never fully got off the ground, but they were all part of it in some aspect. And you have this league that lasted 14 years that nobody really knows about in the sports world. And it's kind of mind-boggling to think about that, especially for the women who played, who are all in their like 1960 or are all in their 60s and 70s right now. So that's kind of the shortened version of, how it all came to be about, but there's much more detail obviously in the book.
I have a question right off the bat here, because I only got to read the back of the book. Greg read the full book. I read the back of the book. Kyle has never read, so we got all.
I had one copy and I had to read it in like 6 days, and I don't read that fast, so we couldn't share it.
Were they allowed to have cool names? Because it seems like the men named these teams. I saw a couple on the back of the book. There's the LA Dandelions, which is pretty bad in my opinion. Were there cool names at least, or was there any where there's like, the Vegas Violets or shit like that? Were they allowed cool names?
Well, so some teams had owners, which were all men. There were no women owners in this league. And then some teams formed with the players, and the players just funded themselves. A team that did that was the Houston Hurricanes. They spelled it HERR instead of the regular spelling of Hurricanes.
That's good.
The LA Dandelions was actually named by the owner's wife, who said that they're pretty spring flowers that you just can't kill. That was her idea behind it. We had let's see, the Detroit Demons was a team.
Pretty good.
I think they came up with their own name. There's Toledo Troopers, who were the best team throughout the run of the whole league. It's average name.
Okay.
So you have the Oklahoma City Dolls. I don't know how you feel about that one. That was owner related. Dallas Bluebonnets, owner related. The owner related ones are kind of iffy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right, there's some solid ones in there.
There's more. I'm just blanking right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like the one that stood out. The one that stands out the worst is the Dolls, and even the players themselves didn't really like that name too much. But I think the Hurricanes, they changed it to the players themselves kind of wrestled control of that and changed it to Hurricanes. So that's something I'm surprised that memorabilia hasn't sprouted up through the years. Maybe the book, maybe you're gonna open up some memorabilia channels for the players that used to play.
Well, these women have it. We've got, my co-writer and we've gotten
I
tons
forgot
of
to mention
information.
I forgot to mention Brittany right off the bat. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, Brittany De La Creta, that's my co-writer in this, and there's no way either of us could have done this on our own. It was just too much information to gather, and so we really worked well together putting this together. But we both got memorabilia from different players, and some still have storage lockers, boxes full of just newspaper clippings, pictures, ticket stubs, game programs, playbooks, jerseys. They've got it all. And it would be cool if they one day ended up in the Hall of Fame and those things could be put on display.
This is obviously it's made known that I did not read the book. I would have tried had Greg participated in my Zoom reading sessions, but he never logged on.
You can have the copy I bought, Kyle. It's not doing that.
You said I've never heard of this, but it's just so weird. I know all about the history of the USFL and why it failed. The National Women's Football League doesn't even have a Wikipedia.
Did somehow Trump kill this league as well?
That's wild to me that it doesn't even have a Wikipedia.
Yeah. try Googling it. Nothing will come up. All of our information was gained from old newspaper clippings and the players themselves. Really, that was our primary source of information. Because when the league first started, like I said, it was a novelty. People were curious, so reporters were writing gamers. They didn't cover the league the best way they could have, but they were doing like features and stuff like that, and some of it was sexist and kind of sarcastic, and some of it was legit. But for the first few years, there was a lot of media coverage, and then it petered out because like I said, the novelty wore off, and then it just kind of faded into the background, never to be heard from again, apparently, until now.
In reading one of the times when it was about to peter out, they actually made a movie about women's football. That was the Oklahoma City Dolls. I think that was the name of the movie. I don't know how far down the rabbit hole you went, Lyndsey. I ended up just wanted to see what it was like, and ended up watching like 40 minutes of that movie. It's terrible. But I will say this. So it's bad, and they had like men playing the stunt roles of the women and stuff like that. But like for a movie made in the late 70s, early 80s about football, like the football wasn't as bad as I expected it to be, like really bad, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. But that's a terrible movie.
Yeah, the movie was horrible, and it wasn't really based on it wasn't based on the real Oklahoma City Dolls, who were another very good team. Them and the Toledo Troopers banged heads in the championship game numerous years in a row. And there's so many storylines they could have done, and they chose this like lame like women's lib like factory workers, and we're going to show the guys who we are by playing football. And it just, the whole thing made no sense in how they did it, and the acting was just horrible. And so and this movie was made in the 80s, so this was towards the end of actually I think it was made after a lot of the earlier players decided to get out, because some players acted in the movie as extras. So we got a lot of feedback about that. We actually go into the movie and why it's a horrible representation, thank you, of the league and that team in particular. But yeah, the players we talked to about it hate it, absolutely hate it. And that was like, I think that was like the last real gasp that you had about the league at the time, and then there's been nothing since.
My buddy Mike, who will be listening to this podcast, he is insane. He's like he's from Toledo. He is the guy that knows when Candy Cummings threw the first like screwball or curveball in baseball. Like he's a nut. He knows every single fact about everything. And halfway through the book, and I asked him, the Toledo Troopers, do you know the Toledo Troopers? And he's like, no, what's that? And he was like fascinated by it. But like he knows everything about everything and is from Toledo, and is like, he had no idea. He's going to like pour into it and is excited about it, but like there's
a whole museum
that says a lot that he didn't even know about, like the Toledo.
Yeah, because they have a whole thing in their local museum. They have a whole what do you call it, collection of Toledo Trooper stuff, and they were big in Toledo. I mean, there's still a Toledo team today that's owned by one of the former Toledo Troopers who played back then. So there's a lineage there. But yeah, I'm surprised about that, because they're pretty well known in and around the Toledo area.
For listeners, the Toledo Troopers didn't lose a game for like 5 years. They have a running back that had stats like Tecmo Bo Jackson, like her.
Yes.
So her name's escaping me. Lauren, I can't think of her name. It's in the book.
Linda Jefferson.
That's it. Yes, she had her like rushing yards per carry are like 24.8 or something like that. It's insane. But
she had 5 straight seasons of over 1,000 yards and averaged 14.4 yards per carry. She had 140 through that span. She had 140 TDs. And they say running backs don't matter. Get out.
She ran a 4.940 in 1976, which like that's like an impossible standard no matter what gender.
I ran a 6.240 in 2005.
Exactly.
Real stat.
Exactly.
So Lyndsey, with no information out there about this league, how did you even come to research this? Was it just one of those, like, I feel like people are just telling stories like old people and you just like dismiss them and then find you like, I'm going to go look for this. And then you find this artifact.
Actually,
like Indiana Jones.
Yeah, your grandma's like, there's treasure buried in the yard. And you're like, whatever, old lady. And one day you bring a shovel back there and you find it.
yeah, it's just one of those stories that's happenstance, really, how a lot of, great discoveries happen. Brittany and I have known each other since 2015. We run in the same women's sports writing circles. We've connected through Twitter, and I was in a Facebook group with a bunch of other people as well. And we always ran stuff by each other. And Brittany was working on, I don't know, some football related article, and Brittany doesn't know a lot about football. And at the time I was writing, I was doing some work for the Buffalo News and also writing about the Bills a little bit. And I have an extensive background in football. So Brittany reached out to me and was like, I am looking for a football book, because Brittany likes to reference stuff, before writing articles and things, as any good writer does. And just asked me for a reference book or about women's football. And I said, there are none, and Brittany went and looked on Amazon and whatever. And the only ones that they could find were patronizing, explanations of how to play football or what the rules are, or porn books about football guys. That was the collection. So Brittany was like, there are no books. I said, no, maybe you should write one. And Brittany was like, well, maybe you should write it with me. And that was the start. And so we actually were tossing around the idea for a while, and started we got an agent, just happened to know somebody, and our agent is amazing, but pitched the idea of just a general book about women in football. And we're talking like history, women playing, women coaching, women commentating, refereeing, all of that, because there's been so many strides that have made, owners, coaches, all of it. And so we drafted the proposal, but it wouldn't sell because everyone kept saying it's too broad. You need to narrow this down. So Brittany was working on a different article and happened to come upon the Toledo Troopers and the NWFL, and just was like, this is it. This is our narrow angle right here, is this league. And so Brittany showed me all the information that they had about it, and I was like, I felt it too, when you feel like you're onto something. And I was like, let's do it. So we rewrote the proposal based on this league, and our agent loved it. And we had 5-6 different publishers bidding on it after that. So,
oh wow, you had a bidding war?
Yeah, it was the right thing to focus on, and so that's how we ended up with it.
So did you get to talk to a lot of the former players of the league and anyone currently involved with it? Was there a lot of interviewing going on?
Oh yeah, we had to, well, like I said, all the players are in their late 60s, early 70s, so they're not very tech savvy or have ready information readily available. So we did some Facebook stalking. We pretty much would circle names in newspaper clippings that we read about different teams, and then would try to track that person down, and then that would lead to another one. I messaged family members just to get in touch. Some were reluctant at first because someone comes knocking at your door, and since most of them stopped playing in the mid 70s to early 80s, except I know the league kept going, but most of the players we talked to were from that earlier group, and they're like, who wants to talk about the National Women's Football League? Like, what? That was so long ago. But they came around, and once one would start talking to us, they would tell their teammate, "Gotta talk to this person," and we basically split teams. So Brittany took half the teams, I took the other half, and we just kind of did our expertise on those different teams and players. And once they started talking though and realized we were legit, it's like the floodgates opened up.
Are they
Now,
like tough women? Like, does that like football players? Are they answer the door and they like kick it open? Or they're like, what the hell do you want? Or you know what I mean? Like, have they I don't know.
Some were and some weren't. Some are still feminine. Like that's the thing that's awesome about this league. You had women from all walks of life. You had butch women, you had feminine women, you had gay women, you had straight women, you had grandmas, you had women or mothers, you had college students, single, married, like everything. It was it was such a conglomerate.
One thing that Greg had told me in reading this book is that the players were from the actual community they played in, which is like the coolest thing in the world. Because like if Buffalo's playing New England, you're like, I went to high school with that lineman, and then like the rivalry seems more intense because it's people you could see at the grocery store who you've maybe seen for a decade. Like, was there any great rivalries during that time that like stood out?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, there was no draft, right? So you basically had to field a team from the group of talent that was around you. So some teams were more talented and better than others just because they had better players in their area, like the Toledo Troopers, which is Ohio, right? That's a big football area from a long time ago. So it makes sense that a lot of women knew about football and knew how to play. Some women, like there was this team called the Tulsa Babes. They liken themselves to the Bad News Bears because they didn't win a game their entire existence. But
yeah, that's my team right there.
We should do a podcast about them.
They had to work with what they had, and a lot of them didn't really even know football rules because there was no pipeline for there was no youth football for women, and for them to be exposed to it at an early age, to learn as they grow. Like some of them didn't even know how to get down in like a 3-point stance or anything. This is stuff that they had to learn on the fly. But as far as rivalries go, Oklahoma City Dolls and Toledo Troopers, big rivalry. Oklahoma City Dolls and the Houston Hurricanes. It took like 4 seasons for the Hurricanes to finally beat the Dolls one game, which had become their main goal. The LA Dandelions and Dallas Bluebonnets was kind of a rivalry because a set of brothers owned both teams. One owned the Dandelions and the other owned the Bluebonnets. The Detroit Demons were kind of they were rough and tough with everybody. Yeah, you had definitely.
That's
a
Detroit.
group of,
Have you ever seen 8 Mile? That place is crazy. So that's kind of obvious. Did you get any? I know the history of the team was short-lived, and they were more just barnstormers. Which, by the way, I love that term. What can you tell us about the Buffalo All-Stars?
Oh yeah. So I don't know. I couldn't find any gamers or any real in-depth articles on the All-Stars. I know that they were under Sid Friedman's group of teams. Like I said, he operated around the Rust Belt area, Pennsylvania, Ohio, New York, Western New York, around that area right there. As far as limited travel, saved expenses too. Trying to build a fan base in similar areas. Erie, PA was a big game spot. But yeah, they I don't know much. They weren't like the standout team. The best team under his watch was the Cleveland Daredevils, without a doubt.
There is a local tie, and I remember watching this guy play as a Bill, and they would mention it during the broadcast, and they would mention it so much it became like a running joke. Like if this guy was mentioned, we'd always like say, "Oh, did you know his mom played linebacker?" And that was Marcus Patton, and his mother, Barbara Patton, is talked about a lot in your book, and she seems super interesting. She seems scary, as a matter of fact. Though I'm not sure if you or Brittany got a chance to talk to Barbara Patton, but she seemed like a character whose son went on to play in the NFL.
Yeah, Barbara is a character, and I never got a chance to speak to her. I reached out to Marcus, talked to him, and he just, I don't know if he didn't think we were serious or what, which is unfortunate, but I was never able to get in touch with his mom. And after a while, he stopped returning my calls. which it is what it is, maybe he just is tired of talking about it since it was talked about so much when he played. What's funny though is I'm a huge Bills fan right here. I don't remember that being mentioned when I'm watching the Bills back then, and when he played, that his mom played linebacker.
Oh yeah, it was like
I'm sure it was numerous times, but yeah, she's just this charismatic woman who looks like you couldn't wait to go out with her to have drinks and just have a good old time at a party, and then she'd kick your ass on the football field. She had both those sides of the same coin going on, which is cool. And it's a neat tie, right? He learned to play football. He learned to love the sport from watching her, and then he ends up playing the same position that she did. And then she gets to see him, make it to the NFL. And it's one of those stories. It's actually my favorite story in the book because of the local tie. But also how, it shows that gender doesn't matter when it comes to sports and your kids watching you. If they see you play a sport and they see you be successful, or they just fall in love with it the same way you did. And then like girls watching basketball, or and then growing up and wanting to be in the WNBA, or little boys watching the WNBA and then wanting to get into basketball themselves. I love that aspect of it.
One of the amazing things about, like, you talk about, you need to build a tradition of playing football. Like, one of the reasons, and you get into the book, that like a lot of these teams kind of had trouble gaining momentum is because like you need momentum for fandom, but also for playing. And I think one thing that was the most amazing stat in the book, and it wasn't even that yards per carry from the Toledo running back we mentioned, it was that in 1972, women weren't allowed to run a mile because they were afraid that their uterus would fall out. Like, that might even been a line from the book. Like, whether or not women can play football is not even in question if they're not allowed to run a mile on a track. Like the things that women went up against just to try and play the sport, not like achieve on the field, but just to be able to actually attempt to play the sport is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, there's this thinking back then, and especially in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, that women, if they exerted themselves too much, it would cause cancer or something to that effect. So there's lots of information of those misleading.
To be fair, that's why I don't exert myself now. That's what I was told when I was younger, and I just want to play it safe and watch my stories.
Don't want
cancer. It was just so limiting. And then a lot of these women weren't even allowed to play sports in high school or participate in anything until Title IX was enacted in 1972. So when that happened, and they finally were able to open the door and experience these sports that they were never able to touch before, it just, their minds were blown. And then you have people coming around and saying, hey, do you want to play professional football? And that's why so many of them were like, well, hell yeah, because they had been told for so long, for most of their lives by then, that they couldn't. And so to get to do it, and that was the prevailing thing. Like, people wondered why they did it for such low pay, for the way the media treated them, for having to hold down full-time jobs and do this practice 3-4 times a week at night, play games on the weekend, all while raising families and doing all these other things, going to school. Why do it? Well, they loved football, and as people who, I'm a fan of the sport, you guys fans of the sport, it's easy to see why. Football is I say this in the book, it's beyond gender. Like, there's so many aspects of the sport that are endearing to just the human psyche, and that's why people love it, and these women were no different.
And there's something magical about that era too. We've talked before about the podcast, is like, you watch old, even Bills games from like the Super Bowl run, and James Lofton looks like he works at like Tops. He just looks like a regular person. And like,
so true. And
like, now you see like DK Metcalf and it looks like a different human being. But like back then, as tough as it was, you could imagine like, oh, my friend's mom, plays wide receiver in this thing, because they still kind of look like human beings. Like it wasn't an all day, you focus on this 24/7 until you're like a Greek god. And then you go out there and, you know, really show off. It was like a little, there's a little more human side to it.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, there wasn't all that training, and you know, now you can take supplements and eat the right foods and train. And I don't know how many of us can look like DK, but
I could.
you know, it's just different.
I could.
Yeah,
I got up a little earlier every day. And ate
Greg's
rocks.
gym pictures are very impressive when he was on his game.
I never had an ab. I like wings too much. I'm proud of you. Like there's so much in here. It must have been exhausting, but you all collected it well. So it's a really interesting book. I suggest getting it. Kyle will love it.
Was there any, in doing this, did you, I don't know, come up with a key or notice anything about a possible future of women's football? Because football is the most popular sport, but like you hear about the WNBA, Women's Hockey League, but like women football leagues, Kyle was talking about, like I Googled some. I know there's the Women's Football Alliance. There's something called the Legends Football League, which I guess started as lingerie football and aired on MTV2, which is the most 2010 sentence of all time.
I remember that. Yeah, that was insane.
Yeah, I don't think that's an operation anymore. They're trying to rebrand themselves, you know, as a legitimate, you know, football league. But yeah, we talk about that in the book, right? The legacy of the league and where things are at now, where they can go from here, because women's football still hasn't caught on. Like you said, the WNBA, and I cover the WNBA primarily right now for the athletic and just women's sports. So I'm very well versed on the league and what's made it successful, and why it's starting to, you know, expand more and have more reach. But women's football just still, and we don't know if it's because football is such a masculine sport, and there's still just that hurdle to get over for people to see women banging heads that way. I don't know. We don't know. But there's also the aspect that there are so many different leagues right now. Instead of pooling all the resources into one league, you know, they're all fishing from the same pool for sponsors, for audience, for investment dollars, for television deals, you know, instead of just all putting it all together. So that's kind of an issue that may have to be ironed out before they can really try to grow the sport and be like, you know, be successful, gain an audience like the WNBA has. So we'll see. I'm not sure, you know, I talked to some women. I talked to an owner from the Women's Football Alliance of the Boston Renegades, and you can read it in the book, but they had a lot to say about that and what direction they'd like to see this go for the future.
All right. Well, I was going to move on to the trivia game unless Kyle or Greg had any final questions.
I want to win at trivia, so I'm ready.
Well, that'll be a first. So before we do trivia, which I'll explain in a second, we have our number one Patreon, Thomas Mulcahy, has a blurb every weekend, every episode rather, and he just quickly wants to say that bye weeks suck and we should get rid of them, which is.
Well,
I think the players kind of need them.
I think that's true as well. But I will say, regardless of a lack of a Bills game, most of the games this past week were snooze fests.
Yes, they were.
I think if the NFL gets rid of the bye week, during 1 week of the season, the team is allowed to do steroids. Just that 1 week, just to get over the.
They do steroids. Of course, look
legally,
at DK Metcalf. Yeah, he did. It's steroids. Also, before trivia, real quick, Hail Mary. Where do we get it? You know, like, do we just follow you on Twitter? What do we do?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm always happy about.
I'm following you on Twitter. I'm putting this into the second person to ask. I'm the audience right now.
Yeah, it drops next Tuesday, a week from today, which is kind of crazy. This process has been like 3 years in the making. But yeah, it's Hail Mary, the rise and fall of the National Women's Football League, available wherever books are sold.
All right, and you're a local Buffalo author, right? So, you know,
support Buffalo.
I am. Yes, I am born and bred from Buffalo, New York.
You didn't support the Buffalo All-Stars, so support Lyndsey and Brett.
Yeah, make up for it.
That's right.
Okay, so we always end our episode with trivia. I have 3 questions and a tiebreaker if needed. And every trivia game, we need something to play for. So I make up a jersey. We play for a fictional jersey. Normally it's someone terrible, like your EJ Manuels, what have you. But to stay on theme here, today's jersey is Sarah Fuller, the first woman to score in a Power 5 football game, kicked for Vanderbilt. But I'm going to change it to a Sarah Fuller Detroit Demons jersey because I like
it.
Okay.
I like that name. So
I like it.
The winner will get a Detroit Demons Sarah Fuller jersey. Lyndsey, as the guest, we're going to start with you for this first question here. Question number 1, what number is larger, the amount of pages in your book or the amount of all-time wins by the Buffalo Bills?
This is rigged because she knows one of them.
That's
Yes, sort of. I mean, I don't know what the final count is. I haven't gotten my final book yet.
I didn't sneak a peek. This is according to Amazon.
All time wins.
All time. This is including AFL. So 1960 on.
Bills.
Okay, going Bills. Greg, we'll go to you next.
Okay, so that would have to be at least 300 wins, somewhere around I'm helping Kyle. Somewhere around there. I'm gonna go with page numbers.
Oh, okay, going page numbers. Kyle.
Does it count the bibliography? The pages in the book. Yes, there's a lot of references.
The front and back cover count for reading too. Well, I have no idea. I'm going to guess the book. Complete guess that it's at 346. Complete guess.
Okay.
Wins, no idea. 50 years, we'll say 8
I
times
just told
50.
you about it.
I'm going to go wins. It's
Wait,
got to go wins.
You're going wins.
Yes.
Okay. Lyndsey and Kyle get a point. The Bills have 442 all-time wins. They're 442, 488, and 8. So still below 500. And Lyndsey's book, according to Amazon, has 304 pages.
Oh, man.
Oh, now I know.
Question number 2, we'll start with Greg on this one. Greg, the phrase Hail Mary became widespread after a play by what quarterback? Is it Roger Staubach, Joe Namath, Joe Ferguson, or Brian Brom?
Roger Staubach. Brian Brom. That's what, I was already locked in on Staubach.
There,
so, yeah, I think he did. Staubach.
Oh, go Staubach. Kyle, you can go next.
Yeah, it's Roger Staubach.
Oh,
don't let Kyle go after me when I know the answer.
Lyndsey, what do you? They're too confident.
Well, how can I dissent? No, I'll go Staubach too.
All right,
well, you're all done with me.
You're all correct. It was Staubach, and well done. Score is.
I was the fullback there. That in football terms, they followed me through the hole.
That's true. Lyndsey and Kyle 2 points. Greg 1 point. Final question. There is a tiebreaker if necessary. We'll start with Lyndsey again. No, we'll start with Kyle this time. Sorry.
Jeez.
Well, yeah. So Lyndsey's book is listed on Amazon under social sciences. I'm going to give you 3 book titles. 2 of them are the top 2 most popular social sciences book, your top 2 main competitors to overtake in sales, and 1 is not. So tell me which one is not Lyndsey's biggest competition. All right. 2 of these 3 books are bestsellers and 1 is not. So which one is
that's not going to help me one bit.
Which one is the not bestseller? Is it A, Mother Trucker, Finding Joy on the Loneliest Road in America? Is it B?
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, I want to read that.
Is it B, The Mushroom Bible, The Definitive Guide to Magic Mushrooms? Or is it C, The Book of Hope, A Survival Guide for Trying Times? Which one of those is not a bestseller?
What's this category called? Social
sciences.
Social science. Okay. Well, trucking isn't a science.
Lyndsey, he's going to ask for the answers again.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll give it.
Do it one more time.
Okay, there's A, Mother Trucker, Finding Joy on the Loneliest Road in America.
I hope you made that up. That's good. I'm going to write it.
There's B, The Mushroom Bible, The Definitive Guide to Magic Mushrooms. And there's C, The Book of Hope, A Survival Guide for Trying Times.
I will go. My dad was a truck driver. Yesterday was his birthday. I will pick the truck driving book.
Okay, you're going A. Lyndsey.
I don't think he was lonely though. I think he was drunk. But
Well, Lyndsey, what do you think? I don't know if you've scoped out your big competition yet, but
I haven't. This is what's not, right?
which is what's not, yes.
Which is what's not.
Two of these books are number 1 and number 2 in their respective
Ooh.
categories, and one isn't even close.
Huh. I'm gonna go with the Mushroom Bible.
Okay, going Mushroom Bible. Greg, to you.
I'm going with the other one because I have to, but I also think it's
Sure.
the one because you said it was crying times and then trying times. So I think you made it up and misspoke. So I'm playing the player and saying it's that crying times one that's made up and not right.
Well, in typical fashion, our guest wins the trivia game.
Damn it.
The Mushroom Bible is a real book, but it's not anywhere close to the top 2. Number 1 in social sciences currently is Mother Trucker, Finding Joy on the Loneliest Road in America.
Thanks a lot, Dad.
And number
I'm gonna
2,
have to read it now.
and number 2 is The Book of Hope or Survival Guide for Trying Times by Jane Goodall. And so, yeah, congratulations, Lyndsey. I'll send you that jersey in the mail. And yeah, that's the end of our podcast.
Lyndsey, just so you know, my book is ranked 431,387 in Amazon under him. So you'll do better than I am right now. On my
But out of how many, Greg?
It's 431,388. So I'm beating a book on trucking. They didn't come up with as clever a title.
That's the 10-page book I wrote about my dad's experiences.
My dad drives a truck. Beep, beep. His truck is big. His truck is blue. I'm Kyle.
And then it's 8 pictures of trucks.
Oh, yes. Thank you for joining us, Lyndsey. This was awesome. Good luck with your book and the release and and everything in life.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the conversation. I know some of the explanations of like how the league got started can get a little long-winded because it's not just, oh, well, this happened. There's different things that trickled down, but yeah, I hope people enjoy it. And I think it's important to note too, because I wanted to mention this at some point during the conversation, but these women never wanted to play in the NFL. It was about having their own league and play their own game, their own form of the game, and just to enjoy it and be able to play.
It comes through that's the motivation. Like it was just to play football and they weren't even allowed to play football. Like that's a cool thing that does come through in the book. Awesome. That's it. That's the pod. No one is listening at this point. We already said we were ending and we're all still talking. So
I just want to remind everyone the title, Hail Mary, the Rise and Fall of the National Women's Football League. So go get that book.
Yes, go get it.
All right. Sweeto, everyone. Thanks. That's it. I'm not going to say goodbye again. I said it like 3 times. So.
There once was a team in the NFL, and the name of the team was the Buffalo Bills. The kick sailed right, and the fans did grow. No, no, Buffalo, no. Soon may the Allen man come to throw to Beasley and Diggs and run. One day when the playoffs are done, we'll have won that Super Bowl. A ship once led by Marv Levy, with a Bennett and a Thurman and a Jim Kelly. The ship sailed true o'er 1,000 days, never won that Super Bowl. Soon may the Allen man come to throw to Beasley and Diggs and run. One day when the season is done, we'll have won that Super Bowl. Turn of the century come and gone, alas these Bills tread the playoff road. 18 years of sorrow and dread fell o'er Buffalo. Soon may the Allen man come to throw to Beasley and Diggs and run. One day when the season is done, we'll have won that Super Bowl. A light shone dim in 17, Taylor McDermott and Brandon Bean. Bills fought hard but needed help, throw, Dalton, throw. Oh, now the Dalton man comes to throw to Boyd on 4th and long. 18 years of playoff drought fled from Buffalo. 7th in the draft, McBean, see their man, plucked from Wyoming, a Josh Allen. 2 years later, a stud named Diggs lands in Buffalo. Hey, now the Allen man comes to throw to Beasley and Diggs and run. One day when the the season is done, we'll have won that Super Bowl. The future has come with records laid low. High are the hopes of your Buffalo. On a wing and a prayer, our voices soar. Let's go Buffalo. Hey, now the Allen man comes to throw to Beasley and Diggs and run. One day when the playoffs are done, we'll